What does CloverPit hide from you off camera and behind the scenes? In CloverPit, you're dropped into a room containing a slot machine and a single door preventing your escape. The only way to break out of this horrifying place is by winning it big, so it's time to channel your inner Vegas. Despite this taking place in such a small room, there's a lot going on out of sight that you can't typically see. And so today, we're taking a look behind the scenes at some interesting stuff that's hidden from the player. Like for instance, a really cool cat hiding just out of sight. That being said, I hope you enjoyed today's look out of bounds. So as always, I like to do a quick recap of what we'll be covering so we're all refreshed on the game's flow of events. After loading into a new save, the player is given a few coins and some Clover tickets to get their game rolling. As you insert your coins and start spinning, your prize will be decided based on the patterns you successfully match each spin. In order to maximize your earnings, you'll use Clover tickets to purchase lucky charms. These power-ups directly impact your performance of the slot machine, allowing you to achieve higher rolls and way more cash. How you combine these charms can make a huge difference, and you unlock more as you progress your save file and keep the spins coming. Deadlines must be hit within a set amount of turns as well, and failing to deposit enough coins before the deadline ends will drop you into the abyss below, forcing you to start over from the beginning. We'll leave our recap there though, and now let's break some stuff. So first and foremost, we can now do some exploring around the map from another perspective. When looking up, we make the shocking discovery that they never put a roof on this darn place. If we're so well off in this business, why can't we afford a ceiling? The darkness that surrounds this level usually hides this fact, but at least it's well ventilated, and that's gotta count for something. Something that's typically out of our reach is the spooky crane as well. And while at first it made me think we're in some kind of messed up claw machine, I realized it's far too grim to be the case. This thing is covered in rust, and what I can only assume is blood. But we can rest easy, knowing that at the very least, there's nothing terrifying on the other end. The rope above it doesn't lead anywhere, so we've got that going for us at least. Speaking of which, because of the disturbing lack of ceiling in here, the chains and cables hanging from up above don't lead anywhere at all. They all come to an end a short way above the rest of the level, shrinking in size until they come to a weirdly sharp point. This whole map so far has been surprisingly sharp and pointy, which makes it a bit harder to settle in comfortably. Another interesting aspect to this level is the Clover ticket machine. When playing through the game, these tickets will slide out through the slot in the wall depending on how many you earned, and outside the map we can see those tickets clear as day. They're currently just sitting in a straight line, extending outwards from the back of the dispenser. The object itself is clipping through the wall just enough to create some crazy Z-fighting as well, but that doesn't stop our sweet tickets from being dispensed. And on that note, this is what that looks like when viewed from another angle. Now let's talk about the giant pit in the middle of the room. As I said before, each deadline has a coin amount that must be reached, otherwise you'll plunge into the pit below. It's typically too dark to see anything down here, but now we can see things a bit more clearly. Beneath the grate is a long set of rusty pipes, stretching into the void space below. The pipes here are covered in warning labels and valves, and some of them even have these arrows pointing to the bottom of the pit. It really makes you wonder what is pumping through these creepy things all the while. Oh, never mind, they're clearly not even being used. That makes me feel slightly better. Not really though. At the very bottom of this hole of doom, we can see that it doesn't lead to anything particularly dangerous, but somehow something worse. It drops you straight down into the void below. So instead of dying immediately, you'll fall into the infinite expanse of purgatory. You never see this taking place though, as during gameplay, this area is completely dark. Something that would be easily missed in this area is this weirdly stretched texture behind the pipes. It looks like a rusty piece of metal, but for some reason it was stretched vertically a ton, and so it looks weirdly out of place compared to the rest of this area's assets. The only other way out of this map is through the locked door beside you, but you'll need a specific key in order to get through it. Where does it lead in the meantime though? Absolutely nowhere. This door is directly against the wall and leads to another door on the other side, and so it technically doesn't lead anywhere at all, at least not yet. We'll be talking more about this door a bit later on, but for now I want to explore the outside of this map a bit. From an outside perspective, you'll see that this entire level is essentially a small tower just hovering in the middle of nowhere. Right behind the slot machine, there's a large flat plane that's colored completely black, and I'm not certain of its use. It could be to prevent the player from seeing anything beyond this back wall, but I can't say for sure. On the other side of this building, another flat object will spawn in whenever the player interacts with magazines hanging on the wall. This object will appear instantly below the player's view, sliding up into our sight when the player interacts with the object on the wall. It's rigged in such a way so it appears in front of you while inside the level, but you'd never know it was really a massive object stored out of bounds. In the same area, we can also find the key we'll eventually use to open the spooky door. It's floating in the bottom right corner of the backdrop, and it will permanently remain here after being picked up by the player. there. It's pretty scary for a key, especially one that's evidently granting the player their freedom. I guess you could say it's spooky. Yeah, I'll see myself out. Let's divert our attention to the game's core mechanic now, and let's spin the slots. So first, we can investigate the slot machine itself, where I realized something interesting. On the left side of the slot machine, the word real is written with 2 exclamation points. On the opposite side of the room though, the word real is written, although this time with a question mark. I didn't notice this during gameplay, but I still wanted to point it out in case any of you theory crafters missed it. Let's draw our attention to the machine itself though, and you'll pretty quickly notice the lack of slots in this machine. Despite the lack of interface, there is something worth checking out here, and that's this super cool cat. This object is simply called Cat Easter Egg in the game's files, and they're a surprisingly cool find inside this terrifying location. They just chill out inside the machine all day, keeping a notepad on hand for whatever it is they do. Who knows, maybe they're responsible for tracking your coins all along, which is pretty impressive. Whenever coins are put in the machine, they just slide in through the slot and disappear, with only the last remaining in place. I'm not sure if this character appears during a regular playthrough, since I only learned of their existence when exploring this area after the fact. Either way, what a cool cat. The slot machine interface we see when playing the game isn't technically attached to this object either. Instead, it's projecting a smaller version of the actual objects, which are stored outside the area we're playing in. By moving the camera over here, we can find the default set of symbols that are displayed before the player begins spinning. These objects are fully rendered 3D assets, and there's about to be a lot more of them. Before getting to that though, you can also see these red circles placed a ways behind them. These are here to give the red glow seen around each symbol when interacting with the machine. And there are actually a lot more layers to this than you can see at the moment. The rest will only appear after we've used a spin, and with that said, we can now watch what happens from another perspective. As soon as the lever is pulled, dozens of more symbols will instantly appear in this huge stack out of bounds. This is done to simulate the spinning of the symbols within the machine. But there are a lot more of these objects than I'd expected. Each time you spin, this object is randomized and then reset to the very top position, with each column falling into view through a quick animation. You can also see that a squash and stretch method is used on each object as well, a detail that's hard to notice but makes this animation seem a lot more fluid during gameplay. When matching symbols, you can see that the rainbow effect is just a copy of the objects you matched that appear directly behind them, and the coin animation takes place here as well. In the very back of this area, the indicators showing which pattern you achieved will appear once your spin is completed, and this is a lot more visible when getting a jackpot. When this happens, you can see all these effects clear as day, and how they're pulled off from this out-of-bounds view. On the topic of the jackpot, when the player manages to roll all the same symbols, we can move the camera up to see that the top of each column contains the same set of objects. From the moment we pull the lever, the jackpot is already in place, and the animation simply plays out to display it. This is cool to see from this perspective, because it further shows that the slot machine doesn't function the same way a standard one does. While I can't say the exact math that's being used, especially with the multiple power-ups affecting the odds of each symbol, we can see that each roll completely randomizes the symbols out here. The outcome of each spin is already decided when the spin begins, and it's cool to see exactly how this works from another angle. The lucky charms, known in the game files as power-ups, are also stored out of bounds for the duration of gameplay. Every single lucky charm the player can obtain is stored outside the map in a single line, and they're all loaded in at the same exact time. When seeing them side by side like this, you really start to realize just how many of them are in this game. This row stretches so far into the distance, in fact, that you can't even see the end from the main gameplay area. The developers more than likely preloaded all of these so that each one can be called upon without requiring additional loading. That way, there are no stutters or lag spikes when they appear in the shop. Another instance where I believe these are used is when a power-up activates during a spin. They slide into frames so quickly that it could cause performance issues if they're individually loaded each time. So the devs instead chose to make a mile-long set of power-ups. Glorious! 2 of the lucky charms you unlock are actually obtained through interacting with the map. More specifically, the porcelain throne. By choosing the options presented, you'll either sit down to skibbity the toilet or pour out the lemonade. While we're here though, I got a few ideas on how to break this. First, the effect used here is activated once you selected the first option in the menu, but it's only active for a short time when used normally. What's funny is that by forcing this asset into the game before interacting with the toilet, it will stay on permanently instead. This is honestly pretty gross, but it's funny how the object behaves now, especially since we're free to walk around the room this time. I may have had a little too much fun with this, and the object itself behaves more like a pool noodle than a stream of liquid. So I started spinning around and making patterns, which look cool from another perspective. I don't think this is a type of ribbon twirling that gets you into the Olympics though, at least I hope not anyway. Either way, this place is definitely going to need to be sanitized before the next victim is dropped inside. Let's try to break this a little bit more though. I moved the toilet over to the slot machine, so I had a place to sit while losing all my money. And what happened next caught me by surprise. After choosing to sit down, the game still warped me across the room to the toilet's original location. It turns out the game has set coordinates where the player camera will be moved during this sequence, so no matter what I did, I was still moved over here while trying to use the slot machine and toilet at the same time. Now, if you thought the teleportation toilet was breaking logic, what if I told you gravity didn't exist either? If we were to break the wall down and walk off the map, you'll see that the laws of physics are for chumps. We can walk around freely without falling, exploring these out-of-bounds objects for ourselves. This was a bit of a surprise, but unfortunately, there isn't anything we can interact with out here, so we're only sightseeing this time around. What I wanted to try next was moving the slot machine out of bounds and interacting with it while standing next to the symbols out there. Sadly, that's when I learned that the slots behave the same as the toilet. As soon as we choose to sit down, our camera is moved back inside the map until we stand up again. But I can't reach the lever now, so I'm completely stuck. You know what they say, what happens in Vegas traps you in an endless soft lock forever. That's not the exact quote, but it's close enough. So if the player manages to unlock the door beside them, they will enter this massive area full of these small bridges and catwalks. In the middle of this platform, there's another slot machine, and after interacting with it, the credits will roll. But this area is a lot more interesting when viewed from another angle. So while you're playing through the game, this ending area is always loaded in and present. From another angle, we can see that they are, in all actuality, gigantic rectangles stretching out of the player's sight. There are a ton of these objects currently loaded in, with lots of them interconnecting via these catwalks we can only see from a distance. Each of these catwalks eventually intersects, but what's interesting is that none of the others have a slot machine on top like the one we approach ourselves. I'm not sure if there's a lore reason for this, or if it's simply not needed because we'll never get close enough to see them, but it's interesting to see these other areas up close this way. As for these huge pillars, a handful of them are labeled with a number, but the rest of these pillars are not labeled at all. Once again, I'm not sure if there's a reason for this, or if they simply didn't add them under the pretense nobody would see them. I also broke the player out of the map and walked over here before triggering the ending, and so I was able to explore these out-of-bounds areas as much as I wanted. Sadly, although I was able to access these other platforms, there's nothing to interact with over here. None of these objects had any collision either, and that doesn't just go for the platform, but also the gargantuan pillars surrounding me. The only objects with collision were the ones connected to the hallway we left, but you never leave this area during a playthrough, so there was no reason to add colliders to any of these assets. But with that, that's everything I broke and found behind the scenes in CloverPit. Thanks for watching, and cheers!